Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast, presented by Cannonball Books, the kids' fiction imprint of Canon Press.
So I followed the ghost of a king with every step. I tried to see beyond for a trace of the riverside, but restless now.
You know, I think we're on episode 75 now.
Okay, welcome to episode 75. This is SASF,
Stories Are Soul Food.
not SASFA. People say SASFA. There's no just
Okay.
SASF.
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 It ends on the F. And with the microphone, it's
Okay.
great to say into the microphone.
Yeah, edit that out, Daniel.
Yeah, okay, good luck.
All right. Well,
SASF 75.
yeah, it's been 3/4 of a century, and we're still here.
Still, and what are we talking about today?
Well, we got a question from someone who wants to know how, it's an author question. How do you stay motivated to finish a novel? And I thought we haven't talked specific writing craft, and I think we can expand this too to scripts.
This is craft
Chapters.
related. I was just immediately thinking, if a man will not work, neither let him eat.
Well, I thought that was part of the answer. So
Yeah, okay. Are you well fed and well paid and fully employed in other areas?
right, that's a question.
Then motivation is difficult.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so the answer to that is you don't really need it.
yeah.
So the answer
It's hard for me to answer that because I've only ever been do or die. So
you mean because your family's out without a
yeah,
mortgage.
I tried to get jobs. I tried to pick up this and that, and I did, and I had little odds and ends, and I got myself up to a whacking great big $3,000 a month of editing and assisting, teaching, and like, man, we got to eat. We're having babies. We're having babies. I bought a little $99,000 house and was renovating the house whenever I wasn't writing, because those were the two things I knew how to do. But ultimately, it was okay, man. The cars all blew up. We need a car. Like I gotta sell this. I gotta sell this thing now.
Mm,
And then later on in life, it starts to seem crazy, and people say, "Isn't it weird that you can?" And I've said this myself. Isn't it weird that you can invent property in your head via daydreaming and then sell it to people?
yeah.
Like, yeah, that's
That is
weird.
weird.
That
Yeah.
is weird. I create things, I make it up, and it's a great little image of God scenario because it's as close to ex nihilo as we can get in this world, and then sell it.
Yeah.
Like, here I had a thought. Would you like to pay me for my thought? And and people will. And now, years in, plenty of people will be like, "Man, that's the gig. If you that's great work if you could get it." But when I look back on having a roof that won't keep the water out, like just dripping on my babies,
Mhm.
and can't pay the bills, and had to borrow a car once a week to get to church because the cars blew up. And I think about that phase of trying to be a writer.
That's a real phase.
How do you stay motivated? Like, oh, well, water is literally coming through the ceiling onto my children. and
We laugh now.
and I don't have and I don't have a car. And it really was it was my third who just graduated from high school, who was the little baby. And I was trying to add space in this tiny little house. And again, I was either writing or renovating, trying to add rooms, and had the roof off, and we had a summer as wetter and colder than what we're seeing right now. And we have a very wet June, but it was like record-breaking rains in the summer, and I would pay workers to help me, and they would, which was not something I could afford to do, but they would come and take the tarp off the roof, take a couple cell phone calls, and put the tarp back on and leave. And that was kind of how it went then. And then I would leave, and I'd have to go assist in a class, so I would have to put on a tie and leave and go teach downtown, and then would come home, and water had been pouring through the ceiling onto my daughter, who was in her crib napping. So it's like, so she's screaming, and Heather's just trying to let her go to sleep, and then goes up there, and it's like, oh, the house is actually not keeping water out. Like, water's just coming into the crib. So
wow.
to answer the question of how I stayed motivated, or how I stay motivated now it's by muscle memory then, and I enjoy it, obviously, but it's not hard to stay motivated when it's your shot to kill a buffalo and put meat on the table.
Yeah.
So I had a very long hunter-gatherer phase, moving from freshly married in grad school to 3 quick babies to like, I can't get a job. Like, oh, what if I can't get a job at least that pays for this just totally exorbitant lifestyle that I had of having children.
Well, or a roof that doesn't leak. That's pretty
Yeah.
exorbitant.
So then my mother-in-law was driving our hand-me-down car and got plowed by a drunk driver, and he had no insurance and was arrested in the ICU with her. They were both in the ICU, and she was a centimeter away from being dead. She'd leaned over to grab an Altoid when a Dodge Ram came through the driver's window and hit her in the temple with his fender.
Oh my goodness.
But she was leaning away at the time to try to get an Altoid. It was an incredible wreck. Like, looking at the vehicle afterwards, I couldn't believe that anyone was alive. My wife's friend was in the front passenger seat. She took a shard of the engine through her eyeball, and it's like it was just a gnarly.
Wow.
The engine exploded. Shards of the motor were all over the place. I mean, it was gnarly. So that was where the car went. And then he successfully fled the hospital. He hit her and had $50,000 cash in this truck and was drunk, and he flew, far, but survived. They were all in the ICU, and he ended up fleeing, but had no insurance. So that's when we learned all about underinsured motorist coverage.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it was.
Did he leave the 50 G's behind?
Either the police or he kept that, but it's not a thing that they just
hand over to
the victim.
You had to invent some IP in order to receive.
Yeah. So then we bought a car from a friend, Kristen Beecham of Bull Rushed Books.
Shout out to Bull Rushed.
Yeah, and it was trash, Kristen.
Okay.
Yeah, but that I remember driving to my parents' house for a Sabbath dinner, and I remember exactly where it died, and I had 3 kids wedged in the back seat, and I was like, and there goes the transmission. And it was like a $400 purchase. I mean, it was one of those things. So the fact that it died was not a surprise. But yeah, it was wild. And so then after that, I was like, okay, I've got 3 kids. I have kids who remember that.
Oh, okay.
Like the death of the car. And then, so my dad started picking us up every Saturday night for Sabbath dinner, and then letting us take the car home so we could go to church in the morning. And then we'd go by the house after church, and he would drop us back off. Small town, so it wasn't a ton of driving, actually. But from there, I sold a book. And actually, I sold 4. And that was the moment where it's like, that's where we were living at the time. Water coming through the roof, no vehicles,
Yeah.
And then I discovered how long it takes for a publishing house to send the check, which is a long time.
You can only email them so many times.
Yeah. And it was so weird. And it was a 4-book deal, and it was great. And I later on would learn about how taxes will kick you in the head. And they're like specifically designed to murder authors and anybody who works on advances. But, I had lots of lessons ahead. But at the time, it was like, we have hit the promised land. Called a friend who had car dealerships in Maryland and purchased a Tahoe. And that he had purchased at auction and gave us a great deal on it. And so it was like a Tahoe with 20,000 miles on it coming across the country to us. And as we waited and waited, we kept borrowing a car once a week. So anyway, this is a long digression into how do you stay motivated?
Yeah.
How does one stay motivated? Well, having consequences is fantastic.
Yeah.
Having responsibilities and consequences. And it's really difficult when you are in a situation where you're trying to write out of some form of self-expression, or because you think you're a songbird who truly needs to sing, but you actually have a very fruitful life and you have a job and you're putting food on the table, and there's absolutely no pressure for you to do it. So if you're looking to build a better life for your people, they need stories. You have a high cultural vision and you're urgent. You want to be in the fight. I think you can stay motivated by keeping perspective on why it is you're doing what you're doing and realize that the selfish motivations are the weakest. So truly selfish motivations will fade and you'll struggle as soon as it's hard because it's only yourself you're letting down.
Yeah.
And
we let ourselves down all the time. Actually, we're quite comfortable with making
you set a
excuses.
deadline for yourself and you're the boss and you're the employee. Like, you have to be a unique kind of troubled human to
stick to those.
To stick to those. It takes a lot of practice and work to stick to those.
I mean, we don't quote Ben Franklin often, but necessity is the mother of invention. So
yes, this is true.
This has been true for at least 200 years.
So I knew I wanted to write, and I thought I would teach and write in the breaks. Sort of the teacher's life was ideal for writing in my mind, because that's what C.S. Lewis did. So also just summer vacation, spring break, Christmas break, all these times where it's like, then you could write and there, teach. So my determined plan was to pursue probably a doctorate in literature and just be teaching and be writing. And I thought I would just do that off into the sunset. And I did not.
Yeah. So that's the answer. You don't care enough.
Yeah. Sorry. Wherever that question came from. Is it Seth, I believe, a friend? Not a friend. But you have to
an email friend.
A dear friend.
Yeah.
Seth, don't let Brian besmirch you. You're a dear, dear friend. It really is a question of why. Why are you doing it? And whom are you letting down when you're not pursuing it? Ultimately, the answer needs to be God. Like you're letting down God. So if he's given you particular gifts and you feel a burden of a particular calling, you better not flake out. It's just, that's what it comes down to. If you have a great job, you're putting food on the table, but you still know there's this other thing, there are these gifts and this calling that he's given you that you're going to be held to account for, then, you got to actually get into it and fight for it with those stakes. You want a well done, good and faithful servant. You don't want, why'd you bury it all in the yard, man? Why'd you bury all this talent? And I have personally seen many people bury incredible talent in the yard. And
across, specifically writers, are you talking all different
writers,
abilities?
Artists, but especially writers. So there's a kind of endurance that writing takes. Artists doing a picture, it takes a certain amount of persistence, but you can continue to draw or paint and do it occasionally. It can be very the occasional art, and you still feel like you're doing it. But when you can't just write the occasional novel. It takes a certain amount of really, really determined effort going in one direction for long periods of time. And so I have seen many very, very talented writers just bury it in the yard, and bury it in the yard for two major reasons. The reasons why I see it most often are they were in it because it brought pleasure to themselves. That's where they enjoyed it. They enjoyed doing it. And then other things displace it. And they find an equal amount of pleasure in just vacation, and having weekends and having their evenings. They have a day job and they love the idea of watching a show with their wife at night.
Guilty.
Yeah. And I love that idea also. And they don't actually, take the midnight oil and torch it and get to work.
Yeah.
And
some of the most, go for it.
This is actually probably the most common one. And this is where I could really poke the eyeball. They also do not. Goes for male writers, especially across the country. Some of you even know who you are. Who I know you listen to this. Your marriage is not good, so she's not on board. She's jealous. She's competitive with anything that takes your creative affection, and she wants to share everything you're doing and is not on board with this pursuit. And so if you go say, babe, I'm writing tonight, you're going to be in the doghouse. And I've seen that destroy more writers than any other thing, which is weird to say.
Yeah.
So that's male writers, and it's still destroyed more writers than any other thing. Strangely, when you see a woman who has a real talent for writing, and I talk to my daughter a lot about this right now, like as she's now out, well, she's in college and she loves to write, she loves to draw. This is what she wants to do, but she also, wants to be a wife and a mother, and she wants to have kids, and that's going to come first. So women have a different kind of wishbone that they get stuck on. And it's really hard. It just really is hard. So it has to be secondary. And for a guy, it has to be secondary to providing. And for a woman, for a man and a husband, who's actually a father, it has to be secondary to providing. And for a wife and a mother, it has to be secondary to providing.
I wonder if part of the reason for that, the male thing, is just how being an unpublished author in the middle of a manuscript, it's not like a respectable position, I guess, in some sense.
I've seen it happen to guys who have publications. I've seen it happen to guys who.
So it's just competitive bad marriage.
It's just, she's not on board. She's not actually. She wants you to go sell insurance from 9 to 5 because that's what her dad did, and or that's what her dad didn't, and she craves that stability. It's not always unreasonable, but just means the guy has not done a sufficient job. He's not done a good job clearly sharing that mission and that vision with his wife, such that she does not own it. And so he gets treated like he's cheating on her with this other thing.
Oh, wow.
And, good luck. good luck finishing that novel.
Yeah.
So, and especially when the food's on the table, like there is food on the table, you are providing, you really need to have it be a team effort. If you're married, it needs to be a team effort. There has to be a team vision. If you're a mom who wants to write and you want to write for your kids, and you have to be thinking about why do I want to write? Why do I want to do this? And, it's like, what's the point? And ultimately it has to come back to obey God. Like, I'm doing this to obey God, and he's given me these gifts, and I'm supposed to use them. And I'm supposed to use them in the correct place in my life.
That puts Tolkien's gravestone in perspective. I remember I jumped a fence because the graveyard wasn't open, and I really wanted to find his gravestone. And finding that he'd put Beren and Luthien above his and his wife's name, it really puts it in perspective that she wasn't separate from
at all
his art at all. They were the same.
Yep.
And especially for someone who's so in their own world like Tolkien. I mean, I hadn't thought about how unique that situation.
Yep. And I wish I could remember who this was, but somebody reached out to my wife because they were working on a book about the spouses of great and successful authors. And I fell under like sub bullet point B under successful, but just at least living that they could research, they could interview.
Okay. Yeah.
And I thought, like, man, this is really insightful, actually, because it's funny how few people notice how key that is. Right. I mean, it is key. And you want the kind of woman as I have, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, when you are beat and you are down and the car's blown up and the water is coming through the roof onto your babies, that she's wondering when the next chapter is going to be done. Yeah, she's not asking you to go take a job with her dad. Like but she's not trying to pull you. She's on mission. Like, and she's hardcore.
Yeah,
and
no, that support is so good. Yeah.
My wife is, and it's way more than support, because there's an accountability and there's a pressure. It's a, come home with your shield or on it, or however that quote goes.
Yeah.
There's a kind of Spartan, just kind of a Spartan brutality to it. Like she is 100% on board with our mission, which is these, writing books, stories, production. She's the one who's asking me, like, why haven't you been in LA in the last couple of weeks? Like, why haven't you been down there? And it's like, well, I haven't wanted to.
Yeah.
And it's very much like, well, you better get down there. Like, suck it up.
Right.
It's like, it's that kind of a attitude. She was the one who, when she was pregnant, and I turned down a Nat Geo TV thing, because I was like, it's right at my wife's due date. And she was determined. She's like, if the baby has come, you are going. Like, you have to. You can't just flake on this. Like, I'll be fine. This is okay. So I left when my daughter was 6 days old and was gone for a long time, filming in England and Israel and all over the place. But it was like, peace out. I'll see you in a while. And then that was the one baby that had colic really bad. So whenever I called, there was a background of screaming. But if you don't have that, there will be times as a creator when you are like lying beaten in the ditch on the side of the road. Like, it's just hard. Like, it's really hard. Stuff is hard right now. Like, it's hard. And if you want somebody who's looking at you saying, why are you wussing out?
Yeah.
Not somebody who's saying, oh, I support you. I affirm you. You want, why are you wussing out?
Right.
Like, that's.
Yeah, the key motivation. It's like because they understand the value. Like, you're working for something.
Don't you know that we need to eat? And don't you know that you've been put on this earth for something specific? And don't you know that I swore to give my life to this mission and this vision? Like, I'm on board. Like, I stood up in front of witnesses and swore to be on this team, and then you're going to flake. Like, it's got to be that kind of pressure. So,
which is funny.
She's never had to, it's never been those words. But I've had plenty of times where I'm waking up and she's sitting on the side of the bed and I'm destroyed. I mean, I am destroyed because it's been hard. There's been long hours, crazy hours. And she's asking me like, so is it done? When's the next chapter? All you Ashdown fans out there who are waiting for chapter 16, just know that I have a bee in my house that is stinging me constantly to get that chapter out. Also, because she's receiving all these emails. She's the one that sees all the emails from people saying, where's chapter 16? It's my wife managing that. And I'm like, it's almost, and then I'm distracted and I'm working on something else. So you really do want somebody who's willing to hold that torch, that vision, and be just as on board of not getting distracted. You don't want, and for wives out there, for husbands and wives, if you're married to somebody who is called to do this, like, this is something that they should be doing. And these are their gifts that God gave them. And, they're on this earth in part to create stories. You want to be really, it's like really, really pushing for that to happen. So if you're a husband and, it's like your wife is helping you and you have this totally other mission, like, and she's helping you accomplish all of those things. It's like, okay, well, you did also, like, you do have this woman with these gifts, and you have to as a mom be thinking in terms of how much this feeds directly into your maternal and wifely calling. Like, creating stories and feeding soul food to your kids is fantastic. So it is actually interesting. I can say this, and all you female writers out there can yell at me later and call me a chauvinist. But in my experience, it has been easier. It's traditionally easier for a wife and a mom to fit in the writing life than it is for a husband and a father. Like, it is. It's hard. Either way, it's hard. But as much work as you have as a wife and a mom, as much of a grind as that is, and it is hard. It's very hard work. The stakes are not the same. Like, they're just a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that about freelance, any sort of freelance or self-governed thing. I still remember my high school lacrosse coach shouting at us as blew whistles and we did up downs. And he was saying, you think this is hard? Just wait till you don't have someone blowing a whistle.
Just wait till nobody yells at you.
And then of course, that's the same advice that they give writers all the time. No one's going to make you quit, but you.
Yep.
No one's there being like, stop writing.
And sadly, there are people who do.
Okay.
And there are people who.
No one's told that to me.
Yeah.
Like, cut it out.
I have. So that's what I'm talking about. I've seen many, many stories where the spouse, the wife especially, is the one saying to the husband, who is grinding, he's out the door and he's working, and then he's coming home and he sees the kids and he has dinner. And then they have, 30, 45 minutes together. And then he's ready to go hit his desk until this manuscript's done. I've seen that conversation happen often.
Mm. Okay.
It's like often. My wife was uniquely prepared, though, because she went through childhood where her dad built a very successful, big a bunch of holdings. And then the last year at Jimmy Carter, he lost all of it. Like everything was lost with spiking interest rates and other things. So he lost a ton of real estate and a ton of stuff and was never able to quite recover. So from day one of our marriage, my wife has been happiest when I'm grinding. Like when I'm in the grind, like she's actually seen what it's like. Like she knows that security can't be taken for granted and that you have to build and hustle and grind. And there's no promises that next year will be as good as this year.
Right.
Ever.
Yep.
So she's got this prepper mentality, this prepper gene, and she's never more secure or happy or joyful than when she sees me just going.
Yeah, that's great.
And,
no, a wife who's pumped that you're working hard, I guess, is a blessing you don't always.
Oh man, it sucks.
That's quite a blessing.
No, it's fantastic. It's an incredible blessing, and it's incredible accountability. And I don't think I would have written anywhere near as much as I have already. I don't remember how old I am. I think I'm 43. I think
you heard it here first.
Yeah, I think I'm 43.
She'll let you know.
Yeah. I think I turned 44 in August, but I'm in my 13th novel, and I've got Death by Olivia Notes from the Tilted World. There's been a lot of production, and the reason why there's been a lot of production is because my kids needed to eat, because I was paying tuition, and because my wife was on board, wanting me to lay down bricks and building something. So.
Yeah, because people always run that thought experiment. Look at this father with these kids. What if he didn't have any kids? How many more books could he write?
Yeah, way less for me.
Yeah, and I think that's the answer. It's you're far less productive.
If my schedule was wide open and I just had patronage from some rich family to just write, I wouldn't have written anywhere near as much.
Yeah.
There's nothing like having the lion tearing into your haunches. Like when you're
is it a wildebeest metaphor?
No, I was thinking more horse and his boy.
Oh, okay.
When you're getting chased by the lion, and the lion, like you think you're running your fastest, but you are not running your fastest.
Until you get the lion claw.
Until you actually feel that predator on your heels. So it is really, I mean, it's funny. It is really funny because sometimes in that impacted space is where you're going to actually thrive and create, at least if your teammate is on board and pushing, so, and for husbands, like in terms of your wife wanting to write stories, it's like, well, it really depends on what kind she's fascinated by. But if it could easily cut with the grain of all of her roles because of the nature of fiction, the nature of, soul food and feeding imaginations. So, anyway, all this to say, this is a very small question of how do you stay focused?
Yeah.
Or
motivated.
Keep motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also, as a side note, received a bunch of questions about why I recently, in response to, I don't remember which podcast we did, but I was talking about being scary again.
Yep.
And
that was
100 Coverage Nightmare, whatever.
Yes.
I told that story. I'd forgotten that I wrote that article for the Atlantic Monthly about why I write scary books for children. So I just refer you all to that. And some of the same stories are in there, but that's kind of my manifesto, my treatise on why kids actually need scary stories. So that's there. That's the answer to the other.
We've actually covered that on the pod several times.
Yeah. So, but people come to us like David Radford late, and they missed the first 73 episodes, and then they join us at 74, and here they are listening to 75.
They don't know the gold mine they're sitting on.
Is that what that is that we're sitting on?
It's a mine of some sort.
Yeah. A mine, a pile, whatever. It's a heap. Yeah, it's a heap of something. And we're sitting on it as we continue to lay down yet another podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping motivation, I would say let's boil this down. There's a lot of rambling narrative there, but boil it down to why are you writing? Like why? So let's just actually talk about what your motivation is to start with. And you need to get that right.
What are some bad motivations to be a writer?
Fame, money. I've heard
not money. Oh, you mean wealth, like extravagant wealth.
No, it can be very bad motivation. Money can be a bad motivation.
Okay, you're saying providing is not a bad motivation.
Money can be a great motivation. Money can be a very bad motivation.
Okay, gotcha.
I think we know that it's one of those motivators that could be either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that.
Then you just ask, why do you want the money? That's the
if you
double
said,
motivation.
what's a bad motivator to write? I could say the love of a woman, but that also could be a great motivator.
Worked for Cyrano de Bergerac. So.
Yeah, but there's plenty of motivators that could be good or bad. But I've actually heard it said by novelists, and I've repeated it and I've seen it elsewhere. But I've heard it said that writing a novel is the only way to fame and fortune that does not involve really good looks, athletic ability, or musical talent. So you don't have to be beautiful, athletic, or talented in order to pursue fame in this particular area. And it's really actually true. I mean, significantly more people are trying to get published every year than are trying to make the NBA. Significantly more people are trying to get published than trying to make the NFL, because there's an objective, they just get filtered out really, really quickly.
Yeah, how fast is your 40-yard dash?
Yeah,
it's pretty objective.
How many direct reps can you do of the 225 just like under the bench? Just go, 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 go in a row without hesitation. How good are you on the field? How good are you on the court? How tall are you? How high can you jump? You eliminate all that and you say, man, what in America, what is the route to fame that does not involve athletic, musical talent or good looks, incredible good looks, modeling, acting?
I think it's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is the route.
But that doesn't even get you fame. That just gets you the wealth. So fame and fortune. So, we see a bunch of people trying to do it with social media influencing. They chase it that way, which is incidentally writing. They are constructing a false narrative to try to get to fame.
So true.
And hopefully fortune. So that is a different kind of writing, a different kind of production.
That's not soul food. That's some other kind of.
It's the food for the wrong part of your soul.
It's the food photography folks that use glue, Elmer's glue for the cereal milk to make it look real good.
As they should. Make it look real tasty. But yeah, we tell stories. We tell stories when we want to try to get everyone's attention. We want to try to get famous. And that's actually kind of a random side excursus there, but it circles back to what is your motive? So if your motivation is fame and fortune, then that's a bad motivator, and you'll have to have kind of a massive hole in your soul to stay hungry and keep pursuing that.
Yeah.
It's like that's.
I mean, I'm thinking of all the high school kids who are crafting their images through Instagram and TikTok.
Crafting their narratives.
Yeah, that's sad. You don't want to be doing it for the wrong reason.
Mm-hmm.
If you got the calling to be the TikTok influencer.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, when Shinedown was in town and my friend Darren was filming some videos for them, I was involved slightly and around, and it was really fun. And talking to Brent Smith, and they are an incredibly successful rock band. They have massive. He commented to me, he said, it's really weird that there was this change that happened when before there were fans who wanted to buy your music and they wanted to meet you, and they want you to sign the t-shirt they bought at the concert or whatever. And now fans are not really fans anymore. Now they're showing up hoping that you will do a cameo in their 24/7 channel.
Oh,
so they arrive
because it's their Instagram live.
They arrive trying to get you into their feed and to try to pull as much of your life and mojo and gravity and followers into their feed as possible. It's so they show up to stand next to you for a selfie for their Instagram page. They don't actually often even have a question for you or want to talk. It's just they're just there to feed.
There's changed from admiration to sort of a vampiric.
Yep. He said it's very strange, and I found that really interesting. Yeah. And that's what first made me realize that everybody's programming their own 24/7 channel. Everybody's got their own channels on cable now, and they're all programming 24/7 and frequently for very small following, but they are chasing it anyway. That's all a different form of writing and production.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to go for fame, if you're like, I need to write this novel because it's the only way I'm going to get famous, And even if that's like a subconscious undercurrent underneath it all, you need to knock it off. And then also be aware that, as another very successful writer once told me, being a famous author is like being a famous botanist. It's
What does that mean?
it means you're not really famous.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It means you can walk down the street and nobody would bother you. Nobody will know.
Gotcha.
It's actually really difficult. It's like to get people to care.
You need Tony Hawk levels of
you need Tony Hawk, you need Scarlett Johansson, you need really, really high levels. So, if you are, you could have so many big New York Times bestsellers. How many people would recognize Harlan Coben on the street?
None. Yeah.
Yeah. Few, very few.
Well, it's the same.
I would.
His friend.
I actually would think, is that Harlan Coben? I wonder if that's Harlan Coben, and then I would just move on. It's really difficult. So writers can have done amazing things and be incredibly talented and incredibly successful, and they're not going to have the same kind of fame recognition.
Plus, to be honest, all the dust jacket photos are old.
Yeah. So it's
we'd
good.
recognize Harlan from 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. But it's, so even J.K. Rowling could, if she wore a hoodie and walked down the street, I wouldn't say that's J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
She'd have to really dress for the occasion for me
in robes and a wand
for me to recognize her. And it's really funny that way. Then you think Suzanne Collins or Stephanie Meyer.
Yeah.
I mean, you wrote Twilight, you wrote Hunger Games.
I think I'd recognize Billy Collins, probably my most.
I'd recognize Stephen King.
Yeah.
And then I would, walk over and pull one of his books off the shelf and sign it and put it back on the shelf. That's what I'd do if I saw Stephen King.
Yeah, I don't even.
Yeah, I've done a lot of hidden signatures.
That's
at
awesome.
different points. When you're in bookstores a lot and on tour and you're bored.
That's awesome. We have to find some.
It's pretty funny.
Put those on your Instagram. Tag stores or soul food when you find them.
Yeah, perfect. If you ever buy a Stephen King novel that I signed, I think he talked about doing that.
That's funny.
So that's what I would do in front of him. That wouldn't just be me being malicious, but
it would be a gift. I think he'd appreciate it.
Yeah, something along those lines. So are you chasing fame? Are you chasing fortune? Are you chasing you want to provide for your family? Great. That's a great motivator.
Yeah.
You want a lake house? It's like, get a family, provide for your family. It's like, then get your family a lake house. Go for it.
Right.
But lay down the right motivators. You feel empty. You don't enjoy your work. You're looking for personal fulfillment. Suck it up. I'm just like, okay, that can be a tell that you need to be focusing on something else. But personal fulfillment is
maybe you need to have a kid.
Personal fulfillment is a trash motivator, and having a kid is remarkably more significant than writing a novel. Having a kid and then writing a novel for that kid.
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. Now we're coming up with real reasons. So try to get your motivators in the best place you can. And then once you've gotten your motivation as healthy as you can and squared away as you can, then you can try to fuel it and keep it. As long as it's a little bit fragile.
And then don't flake.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you're writing out a discontentment with your other work and you think this would be more fun, then also stop. That's just not going to work.
Grass is always greener.
Yep. And that also is not a strong enough motivation to actually accomplish
the monumental task.
The incredibly difficult task of not just finishing a manuscript, but finishing a great manuscript.
Yeah. And then you're going to get an ed letter from an editor that's going to have to make you do it again.
And you're going to do it again. And then it's going to come out. And now you're going to have to promote it. And you have to promote it without becoming a narcissist. So, and there's plenty. If you really get into book promotion, there is nothing more humbling than book promotion. So,
just the amount of people showing up to care and
really going for it. When you get your first couple signings in a Costco, and you're like, what am I doing? I'm on this book tour and I'm booked for a Costco. Like, I'm going to sign in Costco, and then people are just whipping past you with 50-pound bags of dog food in their carts, and you're like, would you like a novel? Would you care for,
or would your dog like a novel?
Yeah, would you care for a novel? And I actually I filmed this, and at some point I should drop the the video. But promoting Boys of Blur, I got booked for a number of Costco's, and finally I just gave in. It's like, okay, this is dumb. I hate this. I actually really am grateful that my books are in Costco. I'm really grateful for that.
Oh, I remember this story.
But I can't just, this is dumb. Like, this is just dumb. Like, this is a weird context. I'm showing up to make the stores happy, and I want the stores happy, or the clubs, as the sales rep would call them. But man, this got to be more fun. So I did. I got the hairnet, I got the apron, and then brought a ton of sample sentences on toothpicks and just sat there with my books and wore an apron and a hairnet, and people would immediately see a sample guide swing over and be like, "What?" And I just had a blast handing out sample sentences from the book, and people were very, very confused. And some would ask me if do we eat it? And I would be like, "You may, you may eat this, or you can just read it." And
that's what I normally do with books. Is read
that would be fine. I have no idea how many books we sold, but I actually had a blast.
There you go.
That was fun. So that's even another way of saying it can't be about you. You have to be willing to show up and be a bit of a spectacle and have it not be dignified. You don't get to sit there looking like Tolkien in your overcoat with your pipe. You have to be
elbow patches.
Yep. So this has all been on motivation. Get your motivation squared away, get them in the right place, and then get your wife on board if you're married, or get in a writer's group if you're single, and actually get some accountability and start moving. Start moving.
That's
start
great.
moving.
That's
start
great.
Moving.
We haven't even talked about what you're working on. I think this is all groundwork before you even talk about your idea.
Is the idea any good? Because that can kill your motivation too.
Right.
So you could be a little ways into a novel and you think your motivation's dying, but it actually just the novel sucks and you don't want to read it anymore, let alone write it.
The novel is dying, not your motivation. Yeah.
Yep. That's also possible. That's the worst news.
Yep.
That'd be the terminal situation. Be like, fine,
but a writer's group or your wife can tell you.
Yep.
Oh, this story idea is
no
good.
Absolutely. Does that cover it for the day? Are we done?
We're done. We're going to do more, but we did enough.
We were going to do more, but we did enough.
Yep.
Brian says we're done, everybody.
Peace.
So until next time, this has been SASF 75.
Make you well.
Thanks for listening to SASFA. We're very happy to have you all along on this ride with us. Appreciate all the feedback, all the questions, and all the good words from all the listeners around the country, and even some internationally. Anyways, what I got for you right now is the announcement that Fantastical Wordcraft, N.D. Wilson's School of, is actually on Canon Plus and available to listen to. I think the last time I mentioned it was at some point in the future, but it's there now. So for the low price of 99 cents with code SASFA99, SASF99, you can pay 99 cents for your first month, watch the course, and then if you can't find anything else to listen to, you can unsubscribe. Or you can stay subscribed to continue to support us and show us the love. Anyways, you might be asking, what is the School of Fantastical Wordcraft? It's basically Nate's 10 to 15 minute talks, 9 of them, plus an intro on how to tell stories. So if you've ever wanted to tell stories, nonfiction or otherwise, and you thought, man, I should become a writer. I want to finish that novel. This is the course for you. Nate always says it's for kids as young as anyone who's ever said, hey, I want to be a writer when I grow up, and for adults as old as the same thing. So there you go. Some of my favorite lectures. I think the plot and outlining and story architecture chapters especially useful. And then, of course, Nate's descriptions of how to write the basics are also key. Anyways, there's the pitch for N.D. Wilson's School of Fantastical Wordcraft, available on Canon Plus now. You can subscribe using that code SASF99 if you're a first-time subscriber and you go to mycanonplus.com.